Is there any way we can make genocide light?
Oh my god, no. Are you sure about that? Okay, no one has ever gone to Schindler's List and said, it's a good movie, but you know what it needs? Some yucks to lighten the mood. Yeah, but what about Roberto Benigni? He made Life is Beautiful, and that's a film about the Holocaust that's funny. Yeah, and Jerry Lewis made The Day the Clown Cried, a film about a clown in Buchenwald that was so terrible it has never been released and is infamous. So, no. I'm Dr. Blunt, philosopher, academic, serious gentleman. Today we're going to be talking about whether global poverty is like genocide. Nope, nope, I'm doing this one. You're a clown.
Okay, hi everyone. So, fair warning, you know that I like my skits, you know that I like my dumb voices, you know that I love dunking on Bentham. But today's video, we are going to be talking about genocide. So it's not really a topic that lends itself to humor, so it's going to be a little bit more serious. Why are we talking about genocide? Well, remember in the last video, I set the conditions for resistance as being two international crimes. Crimes against humanity and genocide. But why these crimes? What makes them so special? Well, the first thing that I'll say is that there's actual consensus that these are particularly evil things. Across the world, people say, yeah, this is something that overrides the norms of state sovereignty. It's written into international law. It's embedded in the responsibility to protect, and we should take consensus seriously. It's not something that happens a lot in politics or in philosophy. Now, that's one sort of practical reason. The deeper reason is moral. There is an underlying argument here. So a while back, Richard Vernon wrote an article called What is a Crime Against Humanity? And he gives this very compelling moral argument that crimes against humanity and genocide are so particularly reprehensible because they invert the state. The state, we create it to protect ourselves from predictable threats. But when crimes against humanity and genocide happen, the state becomes the very threat it was supposed to save us from. It is this horrific inversion of the tool that we created to protect ourselves. So the question that I'm interested in this video is whether global poverty is comparable to genocide. And this might seem like a wild claim, but it's not unheard of. Thomas Pogge has compared people living in the global north with ordinary German citizens in Nazi Germany who were aware that the Holocaust was happening but did nothing. He's also compared things like the World Economic Forum to the Wannsee Conference, where the Nazis planned out incrementally the Holocaust. So it's really quite a provocative claim, but it's not a claim that I pulled out of a hat, right? But is it true? Well, in order to understand that, we need to understand what exactly genocide is. The practice of genocide has been with us for a very long time. If you crack open the history books, you're going to find numerous examples of genocide-like behavior being conducted by human beings. But it's only in the 20th century that we actually give it a name. And that name comes from Raphael Lemkin. He took a Greek prefix, genos, meaning race or tribe or nation, and compounded it with a Latin suffix, side, meaning to kill. So it's killing a group. And that's a general idea of it, but if we want a specific understanding of what genocide is, we need to turn to international law, specifically the Genocide Convention and the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, and it gives us the following definition. Genocide means any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. This definition seems to explode the comparison. When we talk about people living in severe poverty in the world today, we're not talking about a single ethnic, religious, or racial group. We are talking about a very diverse population spread across the entire globe. So it seems that we should say this comparison actually does not really work. But there is a line of criticism against the current way that we understand genocide. So people like Larry May, for example, argue that the genos element of genocide is too narrow. It's too constrained. It's actually quite arbitrary, and it doesn't tell us really what sort of crime we're looking at. So if we look at the Rwandan genocide, for example, we have two groups, the Hutu and the Tutsi. But he points out that there was actually very little difference between the two. They were basically the same group of people, but they were divided into two groups by German and then Belgian colonial occupation, which then became sort of a wedge that produced eventually the genocide. But the only way they could actually tell the two groups apart was by looking at their ID tags after the fact. Furthermore, it's unclear why nationality, ethnicity, religion is actually relevant at all. So think about the genocide in Cambodia that happened in the 1970s under the Khmer Rouge. This is often called an auto-genocide because it was directed by one group against itself, by Cambodians against Cambodians. But it was much more specific than auto-genocide. The people who the Khmer Rouge targeted tended to be educated, westernized, and lived in cities. These were the people who they sent to the killing fields. So if we expanded our understanding of genocide to include something like class or the area where one lives, then we would have a better way to capture the events that happened in Cambodia in the 1970s. But the problem is that if we expand out this idea of genocide, we lose something, don't we? Genocide was designed to be a very particular crime. This is what Lemkin had in his mind when he described it. And by expanding out the definition, it becomes more malleable, less targeted, less precise. And I like my concepts to be precise. I like to know what exactly it is we're talking about. So where does this push to expand the concept of genocide come from? Well, in international law, there does seem to be this idea that some international crimes are worse than others, and genocide's at the peak of a pyramid of great evil. And other sort of more ordinary crimes against humanity don't stack up. So there's often pressure in international law to push a genocide definition, where in fact we're probably talking about a crime against humanity. Philippe Sands has an excellent bit on this in his book East-West Street, which I would really recommend if you're interested in the history of crimes against humanity and the history of genocide. It is a great, really accessible book. But here's the rub. Even if we accepted this more expansive understanding of what the genos component is of genocide, it doesn't mean the comparison with global poverty works. Why not? Well, it goes to the mental element of the crime, what lawyers call the mens rea. So think about the Wannsee Conference, where the Nazis all sat around a desk and planned out meticulously the extermination of Europe's Jews, as well as Roma, as well as political dissidents, as well as gay people. They sat down and they literally planned out the timetables for the extermination of millions of people. They knew what they were doing. They had what's called the malice of forethought. It was a design. And this is the same in ordinary criminal law, right? There's a difference between murder and manslaughter. A murderer deliberately wants to kill someone. Someone who commits manslaughter has accidentally produced the death of someone else. They have a different mental element, even though they have the same result. And that mental element matters. Because if we look at the World Economic Forum, they meet at Davos, they go skiing, they make big decisions about economic cooperation and the distribution of the benefits and burdens of social cooperation, but they don't sit down and think, how can we kill people living in extreme poverty? Now, that's not to say their policies don't produce foreseeable and avoidable deaths, but that is not the primary intention of their policies. And that makes all of the difference when we're talking about whether global poverty is like genocide. It is not. The same cannot be said for crimes against humanity. I'll be talking about that in the next video. Take care, everyone, and thanks for watching. Oh, and by the way, if you want to know more about these topics, and I know this is a terrible plug, you gotta buy the book. It's a 10-minute video. I can't get into everything. In the book, I go into it in greater detail. Okay, take care, everyone.